My message is entitled Life Laid Down. Matthew chapter 21, beginning in verse 1. This is the story of Jesus' triumphant entry into Jerusalem. This is also marking the beginning of Holy Week and what we would know as Palm Sunday. It says, now when they drew near to Jerusalem and came to Bethphage, to the Mount of Olives, then Jesus sent two disciples, saying to them, go into the village in front of you, and immediately you will find a donkey tied, and a colt with her. Untie them and bring them to me. If anyone says anything to you, you shall say, the Lord needs them, and he will send them at once. This took place to fulfill what was spoken by the prophet. This is referencing Zechariah chapter 9, verse 9, saying, say to the daughter of Zion, behold, your king is coming to you, humble and mounted on a donkey, on a colt, on a foal of a beast of burden. And so what was spoken of, what was prophesied, is that Jesus would come in on a young donkey, and he would come in a humble way. By the way, let me back up for a moment. I love this response and how the disciples were completely okay with it. If anybody asks, why are you taking this animal, just tell them the Lord said it's cool. Like, that doesn't always work, but it worked for that moment, right? Like, that can be very abusive, but it for some reason, it just everything panned out in that moment. And actually, they were confronted, and they said exactly what Jesus said to tell them, and they were like, all right, cool, take the donkey. And it was all good. But they were going off of the prophecies, because they were looking into the Word of God to find, is this really Jesus, the Messiah, the one that we have been longing for, that our entire nation, generation after generation after generation, has been believing in and praying for? And one of the prophetic signposts was that he, in Zechariah 9 again, that your king would come into the city of Jerusalem, but he's not going to come in like a normal king. If you won a battle, you would ride in, and there would be so much pomp and circumstance. You would be on most likely a tall, powerful horse laden with gold and all the, bedazzled basically. And there would be trumpets sounding. There would be all your soldiers to show off how powerful you are. There would be people dancing and singing. It'd be amazing. And everyone would know our king is here. He was victorious and he defeated the enemy. Jesus decides to come in the exact opposite, humble, on a young donkey. Donkeys aren't great animals. I don't know if you've ever seen a donkey. I have. They're not majestic like horses, I can tell you that. There's a reason why in Shrek, donkey was donkey. It's not the animal you normally think of when you're like, I want to have a really good entry party. I'm going to ride a donkey. So, that's what Jesus chose, and that's what happens. Going on in verse 21, or chapter 21, verse 6 to 8. So the disciples went and did as Jesus commanded them. And they brought the donkey and the colt and laid their clothes on them and set him on them. And a very great crowd spread their clothes on the road. Others cut down branches from the trees and spread them on the road. This is why we know it as Palm Sunday, because they were cutting down palm branches and they were laying them on the road so that the donkey carrying Jesus could walk on top of them. It's giving Jesus a place of honor. It says they were, depending on what translation you read, that they took off their clothes or their cloak, whatever they had with them. I mean, I can't imagine they, fully took everything off, but whatever was extra, they took it and they laid it down on the ground. That was their personal possession. That cost them money. That was something that you really don't want a dirty animal stepping on, and yet you're going, here is my sacrifice. I lay it down before you. Jesus, have your way. Lead us the way that you want to. And so it's a beautiful moment. Our kids, every single year, we give them these, in the kids ministry, these parts of a palm leaf. And they teach them how to turn it from this into a cross. And we want to, at the end of service, when you leave here today, we're going to give you one of these, and there's instructions, by the way. There's a QR code up on the screen, or there's instructions in the mobile app, notes, or in the tap tag in front of you, all those different ways that will teach you how you can fold it and do all that stuff. And hopefully, it's going to turn out better than that. I don't have patience, and I'm not an arts and crafts person. But for those of you that want to do it, it's a cute little thing, a little reminder. of that moment for us to look back to and to celebrate and to be grateful for what Jesus has done. But picture, if you will, for a moment what was really taking place at this moment. It was a specific time and event that was happening that was very significant to the Jewish calendar and to the nation of Israel. Passover was that Thursday. Passover was one of the most holy gatherings that they had. So the city swelled to hundreds of thousands of people. Imagine our towns right here. In wintertime, ghost town. Like, there's not a lot of people, there's not a lot of activity, everyone kind of lays low. But come summertime, being that we're all on the coast and these are tourist destinations that we're at, our population swells greatly. And the whole town feels it. You can't ignore it. There's a buzz, there's an excitement, there's something that's taking place. And you have all these out-of-towners and you get to celebrate and be a part of something together. And so that's what's taking place. Hundreds of thousands of followers there to honor and serve the Lord on Passover. Jesus, by the way, just before this moment entering into Jerusalem, Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead. This is a miracle. People are hearing about this. Word is spreading quickly that this man, this leader, may be more than that. He's probably even more than a prophet. He might actually be the Messiah. Someone was dead, and now they're physically alive. And so there is this kind of electric sense in the atmosphere of expectation. Many people believed that Jesus was the long-awaited Messiah. And so as Jesus comes into Jerusalem, while we do not have an exact number, the word that was used in the scriptures, verse 8, and a very great multitude, the very great word that's used there means the largest number or the most. And so this wasn't a crowd of 15 people. Again, I can't definitively say what it was, but most believe it was at least several thousand people that were cutting branches, laying down their clothes, and they were singing and praising and honoring the Lord. This was a celebration. So you have all the things that are happening in the village, in the town of Jerusalem, but then you also have this kind of sub-story that's taking place with Jesus coming in, and it's powerful. And most people had no idea, even the closest followers had no clue what was really taking place. Most people probably expected this was their moment where they were going to overthrow the government, and they were going to take back what was taken from them, and they were finally going to be in the seat of political power where they've never been before. So they were waiting for Jesus come sword in hand to take back the town, take back what they believed to be rightfully theirs. Jesus came with a completely different approach for victory. Matthew chapter 21, verse 9. And the crowds that went before him and that followed him were shouting, Hosanna to the Son of David. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest. Hosanna, originally, the word that it's derived from, originally means save us now, please. But by the time that Jesus was coming into Jerusalem, the word had evolved over the years and over the generations. And it meant more of an expression of adoration, of glory, praise, and joy because of the victory. But it still meant its original meaning as well. So actually, when they said Hosanna, what they were in effect was saying was, God, please save us. Jesus, you're the one that saves us. So it was both a plea to be rescued, but also a grateful shout of anticipation. So it was this beautiful mixing of who Jesus really was, what they had been longing for, and what was right in front of them. It was 100% the appropriate word to be used. I'll get back to the story in a moment, but I want to tell you a little bit. When I was growing up, I was a really fast runner. And in elementary, middle school, and high school, I was the fastest runner for short distance all the way through. I never was beaten. And I was asked, because I naturally good at it, I guess. I don't know. And so I was even being at one point asked by coaches to join the cross-country team or to join track and field. And I never wanted to. I liked the level of running that I did. It was fun. I didn't have to prepare for it. It was one of those, whether I'm wearing sweatpants or jeans, it doesn't matter. I'll run and I'll beat you. And so I had in my mind, I was just fast, and I'm a runner. I run. Jerry is a runner, clearly. And so until my world began to crumble a little bit, at least in the area of running. So people began to take notice of running, and they invited me and suggested that I go be a part of what was called Hershey Track and Field. There's a competition. They don't do it anymore. It was held within the whole state. And I was like, yeah, whatever. I'm the fastest in my school. No one can beat me. Why not? Let's do this. I'll show them how it's done, right? And so I get there to the regional qualifiers, and I run. And the thing about it is no one was running the 200-meter dash that day besides me. So I still had to run it just to qualify. So it felt really awkward when the gun went off, me just hauling it halfway around the track by myself. Like, as I'm running past the bleachers, I can hear people laughing. Like, it's that loud that you can hear people laughing, and it was either that I was running by myself, or it was how I run. So I run, and I don't know why. I clearly don't have the right form. But I run, and my hands get real tense, and my face gets like laser beam focused in, and I'm like the police officer from Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. I don't know if you remember that movie. That's like a machine gun with my hands. And so between that and running by myself, people were just laughing and whatever. It doesn't matter. I qualified. So now I'm off to the state of Michigan's version of this. And actually, it was the first and only time that my grandmother came to one of those events. She had tons of kids and grandkids, so this was a special moment, and like, grandma's here, and I get to show her how fast I am, but I'm looking around. I'm at the starting line. I'm looking around, and everyone around me has like running clothes on, like the proper shorts and the shoes, and I'm just wearing the shoes I wore yesterday. I'm wearing the clothes that were on the ground of my bedroom when I woke up. Right, like, this is not what you're supposed to be. Apparently, I didn't get the memo. There was a dress code, and they're over there. I'm not going to show you. I could if I wanted to, but like, they're over there, and they're stretching like their leg above their heads and stuff like that, and I'm like, oh, okay. So I'll do mine. There we go. Stretching, got it good, ready to go. You know, a little bit of that. You know, and you're fine, right? Because I've never had to. I've always been faster than everybody. So we line up, gun goes off, and we take off. And all of a sudden, I begin to experience something that I've never experienced before. I'm getting passed. I'm like, wait a minute, something's not right. What's going on here? Now, in all fairness, I did not finish last. I finished right in the middle of the pack. So I held my own, but I was so confused the entire run. It's a short run, but my whole world was scrambled at that point. I'm thinking, my grandmother's here. This is embarrassing. Who are these people? What country did they come from? Why can they run so fast? Did we check their age? Like, I'm going through all the things. Are these professional athletes that they imported in? Like, I don't know what's going on. By the way, this is a picture that my grandmother took of us running. I'd love to say I'm in the middle. I'm not. I'm on the far left-hand side, almost off the image. There, that's me. Yeah, but not even in the frame almost. Like, 1 second more and I would have been cut off, or 1 second delayed. I actually want to punch in that photo. I want to show you this athlete right here. So there it is, just me wearing whatever I wore that day, just normal t-shirt. Guarantee that wasn't, it wasn't helping out with the old drag, but of the wind. But look at that. Looks like I have like 65-year-old knees, right? Like, I have my back heel on the right-hand side's up like a half an inch, and my other leg is up barely a foot. Like, this is not the stance. This is not the way that you run. You can see the shame in my eyes. You can see the fear. Not sure if my parents are just going to leave me here and go home or not. I don't know no, actually, most of it was just regret. Like, why did I get myself into this? That was the first time of several that I realized, I may not be a runner. At least not like I thought I was. Second time I realized that was when I met my wife. She was in cross country, and she lived in the UP, and so her team, 1997, took the UP state championship for cross country. Yeah. But it didn't make sense to me. I was like, yeah, you run, I run. What's your point? I didn't realize what cross country was. I mean, I knew what it was, but I didn't realize what it was until my kids started doing cross country. Here's the third time that I realized I may not be a runner. When the gun goes off and they book it and then they just disappear. And then you see them for a little bit, come out of the woods, and they go back into the woods. And they're running, and I'm getting exhausted just kind of moving from the starting line to the middle point, waiting for them, and then you go back. Like, I'm getting winded just by walking. And then the slogan for that sport, for cross country, the slogan is this right here. I found a picture of the shirt, is, our sport is your sport's punishment. It is true. These kids that do cross country, they'll just vomit, some of them while running, and they just keep going. That's what running looks like. Not the 200-yard dash with my new sneakers on. That cross country, those are runners. Those are real runners. And that's when I realized I'm not a runner. I can run. Here's the last time I realized I'm not the runner. A few years ago, my kids challenged me. We were at a field over here at a park. My kids challenged me to a race. I'm like, okay, I've seen you guys run. Yeah, let's go. And so the hand clap or whatever it was goes off, and I'm chasing them, and about halfway through, you guessed it, I pull a muscle. I have never pulled a muscle I didn't even know that muscle existed. And I still beat them. Oh man, that was embarrassing. I don't know what hurt more, the pain or the embarrassment of it, but it was frustrating. There's a reason why I bring all this up. And no, by the way, it's not one of those, the older I get, the better I was. I don't know if you've ever heard that saying before, but you look back and you paint yourself in a better light than what you were. Elementary, middle school, high school, I was the fastest. But I had no competition, no real competition. And then when I met competition, it became overwhelming. That resistance, that pressure, the demand, I was not conditioned for. The reason I said no to all those opportunities is I didn't want to show up to practice. I didn't want to exercise. I didn't want to stretch. I didn't want to eat a certain way. I wanted to just beat people at races, and that was it. But the problem is to go from the level that I was at to the level that I needed to go to, it requires conditioning and discipline. And I didn't want to give that. So back to this story. Palm Sunday, most likely thousands of people are there. Branches are being laid down. Songs are being sung. It's a celebration moment. 5 days later, at the cross, estimates put it at about 4 to 6 disciples were actually at the foot of the cross. Where'd the thousands go? What happened? It was only 5 days. It wasn't like they forgot or they moved on. What happened? Or maybe you fast forward 50 more days to what we know as the day of Pentecost, where there's 120 people in the upper room. So more than the 4 or 6 at the foot of the cross, but not the thousands. I'm sure there's many reasons as to why there was less people. But I think one reason that kind of encapsulates all of it is the cost of being a disciple increased. On Palm Sunday, the cost of being a disciple was hacking some branches off and throwing your coat on the ground. That was the cost. That was the sacrifice. That was the risk. By them doing that, they weren't being persecuted. They weren't being excommunicated from the town or from their loved ones. They weren't being martyred. They were just singing songs. They couldn't wait for Jesus to finally show up, show off, and give them everything that they had hoped and prayed for. But now you fast forward to the point in which Jesus is being crucified, beaten and whipped and hung on a cross and mocked and spit upon, and his flesh being ripped off of him as he's being whipped. His clothes, him laying naked on the ground, eventually hung naked on a cross, his clothes being auctioned off, people mocking him every step of the way. If you're really God, why don't you command your angels to come down and get you off the cross? Well, the cost of following Jesus skyrocketed. If you will, the potential return on investment plummeted. If I follow Jesus on Palm Sunday, I can probably get everything I want. Low cost, high return on investment. But all of a sudden you find yourself where Jesus is an outlaw, Jesus is a rebel, and his life, and by extension of that, his following is being snuffed out by the government, all of a sudden, very high cost, seemingly very low return on investment. And unfortunately, this is the cycle and the rhythm that many of us live our lives for. You fast forward to the day of Pentecost. Much more are up there than were at the cross, but still not the thousands. Because there was now certainly a price to be paid. They were hiding, they were waiting, they didn't know what was going to take place, but at least they had some hope. They had people that were talking all throughout town that this Jesus that you crucified, he has risen. Indeed, he's no longer in the tomb. And so they at least had something to hold on to. They were told to go wait, so they went and they waited. This is exactly what it was for running for me. Just beating some students at a race on the playground, low investment. Very high possibility of a great return on investment. But to be a part of an actual team, to really give it my all, to be someone that says no to all the things that I want to do so I can invest my time, my energy, my focus into becoming a refined athlete, that was too much. I didn't want to do that. And so in one sense, am I a runner? Yeah, I can still run today, technically, let's go. You know, if you're 60 and above, I would love to race you right now. In the parking lot, let's go, right? Like, here we go. Am I a runner? Kind of. But am I a runner? Not really. Let's just be honest. Regardless if I want to be, if I think I am, I'm not. Now, what I don't want to do is I don't want it to cause anybody to think, well, in relation to what he's saying, does that mean I'm not really a Christian because I've faltered in some of those moments? Because I've been with Jesus on the high moments, but when things got difficult, I abandoned him. I'm not saying that you're not a believer, so please don't hear what I'm not saying. But the call to action on this is for us to understand that there is a difference between temporary things and your life. We have to make sure that what we lay down, knowing that it's temporary, that it represents who we truly are and the real sacrifice that we have, which is technically our entire lives. And there's not a guarantee that those things are lined up. All the things that you give to the Lord, and there's a huge list that we can and should give to God. Some of them are pretty basic, like attending church, serving, giving, praying, worshiping, fasting, reading your Bible, like the kind of the staples, if you will. Some of them are specific. Some of them are radical faith that's required. But either way, the things that you lay down, like palm branches, which are temporary, and the things that you surrender that cost you something, like your cloak and your clothes, those things that you lay down, hopefully, they truly represent where your heart is really at, though it's not a guarantee. Romans chapter 12, verse 1 through 2. I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. So God has drawn a very clear distinction. If you want to worship God in spirit, your spiritual act of worship, it actually requires something natural from you. It requires that you deny the desires of your flesh, and there's many of them. They can be things like food. They can be things like your sexuality. They can be things like wanting to have comfort. You have to deny that, and you have to change or renew the way that you think to the Word of God. Reprogram, recalibrate how you see yourself, how you see other people, how you see God, how you talk about people and think about them. Renew your mind, deny your flesh. And those two things is an act of spiritual worship. In other words, real believers that understand that it's not just a handshake, a hand raise, and now you're in the club. Real believers understand there is a daily sacrifice that should be made, and it comes from a daily decision. Sometimes it's multiple times a day. You have to remind yourself, God, today, my heart, my life, my time, my talent, my treasure, all that I am, my hopes, my dreams, my future, everything belongs to you. I surrender to you. When you say go, I will go. When you say stop, I will stop and rest and wait. When you say speak, I'll speak. When you say be quiet, I will be quiet. And everything in between. Most believers don't wake up and don't live their lives throughout the day with that mentality. It's what do I got to do to survive? What do I get to do today? What's available? How do I manage this and fix that and change this? And the Lord has called us to do all of the things, like have jobs and families and careers that bring us into creative ideas and vacations and all these wonderful things. But those are secondary to what should be primary is, God, my life fully belongs to you. I'm fully surrendered to you. Have your will, have your way in my life. I think for a lot of believers, Jesus, Christianity, is an add-on accessory to our already good lives. And we call upon Jesus when it's convenient for us and when we need something. We have no problem doing some property damage, chopping down some palm trees and laying them on the ground when we're in desperate need of something or when everything's fine. But when things get real difficult and the price tag gets real expensive, that's where we see a lot of believers cut and run or go radio silent towards God. God calls us to give a spiritual act of worship. So those temporary gifts, they're important. They're meaningful. I don't want to diminish for one moment what we just did here a moment ago, where you sang songs to Jesus, reading of the Bible together, fellowshipping among believers. Hopefully, outside of the four walls of these buildings, you this week are going to be ministering to people. You're going to be feeding the poor. You're going to be clothing the naked. You're going to be listening to people's stories and praying with them and making yourself available for whatever it is that the Lord brings into your life. All of those things are beautiful. They're needed. So I'm not poo-pooing any of them, but please understand that they are temporary things. And do not confuse the gifts that are on the ground that you gave with a life that's on the altar. And it's very easy to confuse those two. Well, because I gave money to the church, God knows that I love him. Because I showed up for this extra event and was a part of it for a while, God knows. Hopefully, when you do those things, it's because your life is laid down on the altar for Jesus. But it's not a guarantee. And so we live in a social media world where we sell people what we want to sell them. I don't look like this, I look like this, right? This was what my vacation was. It was waterfalls and riding horses and look at all the beautiful food we ate. Well, you didn't see the photos of us yelling and arguing in the airport, right? And you didn't see it where I'm, grumpy, or we only post what we want people to see. But the truth is, the person that we deceive the most oftentimes is ourselves. So for instance, just because you showed up to church today, that's a palm branch, that's a coat on the ground, it does not mean that you have allowed your life to be placed on the altar as a living sacrifice. A living sacrifice means God doesn't want to kill us, but he wants us to continually stay on the place of the fire of refinement, the place that's difficult, the place that requires dependency upon him, the place that says, I cannot live for my own purposes. I must give all that I have because he gave all that he had. Galatians chapter 2, verse 19 through 20 says it perfectly. For through the law I died to the law so that I might live to God. I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. And the life I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. This is no longer your life. It's no longer my life. Because we have accepted what Christ has done, we no longer live for ourselves, we live for Jesus Christ. The life that I now live it in the flesh, it's still real, it's still right here in front of me, but that life that I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself up for me. In other words, while I'm not preaching about it today, I am next Sunday we have to make sure that we understand the reason why we have good works and do good things is because we're saved, not in order to gain salvation. Salvation becomes the fuel that propels us forward to do good works. And when we get that backwards, we become very twisted in our thoughts, we become manipulative, and we become very religious. So that's next Sunday. But it's important for us to understand that anyone can lay something down, but very few people stay down for a lifetime. Anyone can show up to church on Sunday, but very few people on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, all the way through, very few people say, God, I'm not going to just do a temporary palm branch. I'm going to still do that. I'm still going to do all these things, but before and during and after all of those things, I'm going to remain on the altar of sacrifice for you, a living sacrifice. In the Old Testament, sacrifices, they had an aroma. There was smoke. And God says that in moments like that, our lives, it's a sweet-smelling aroma. That's what our prayers are. That's what a life laid down truly is to God. It's a sweet-smelling aroma. It brings joy and pleasure that he says, this is my children who could, because of free will, could do whatever they want to do, and yet they choose to reside, to remain, to abide with me. What is offered to the Lord, it is important and it's necessary, but only as much as it's fruit of a humble heart that's fully surrendered to the Lord. In other words, it's entirely possible to check the religious box, but not have your heart associated with it. All right, okay, I can't stand broccoli. I like vegetables. I have a lot of vegetables I like. Broccoli is disgusting to me. Unless you smother it with cheese, that's a whole other story, but that's probably because of the cheese. I don't like broccoli, though I know it's healthy for you. It's good for you to eat. It would be a false assumption and statement for me to say, if you eat broccoli, you are a healthy person. Because when I eat broccoli, like I said, there's cheese on it, right? Right? So it's not true to say, if you eat broccoli, you're a healthy person. It's also not true to say, if you're a healthy person, you eat broccoli. Because maybe you're incredibly healthy, you just don't like broccoli, right? So broccoli doesn't make you healthy, and just because you're healthy doesn't mean that you eat broccoli. Lest I confuse everyone, that's exactly what I'm talking about when it comes to our good works, to the palm branches that we lay down, to the things that we give to the Lord. You can give those things, but it doesn't mean that you are, in your heart condition, are a living sacrifice. And you can be fully surrendered to the Lord, but it does not mean that you are obedient in laying those things down, but they all correlate. Because here's what I know. If your heart isn't in that place of surrender to Jesus and you're not on the altar doing those things, I wouldn't say stop doing them, because oftentimes doing those things repetitively over time will condition your heart toward being a living sacrifice for Jesus. It's like if I eat my vegetables, even though I don't want to eat my vegetables, and I keep doing that, maybe over time, if I do those right decisions and make a few other right decisions, I will become a healthy person. So they feed off each other, they connect with each other, though they are not the definition of each other. Or in other words, you can go to church your entire life, you can give millions of dollars, you can serve in every single event that's ever been created, you can go on every single mission trip worldwide, and it doesn't mean that your heart is surrendered on the altar of praise towards him. Maybe it does, but it's not a guarantee. Jesus actually warns us about this when it comes to fasting. He said that you don't want to be like the Pharisees or the religious people, who when they fast, they do it loud and very publicly so other people can see them and see their sacrifice and go, oh, look how holy they are. They gave up all of that just to worship God. Jesus says, don't do that. If you do that, there's nothing wrong with fasting. In fact, it's great discipline. But if that's the reason why you fast, then that's the only reward that you're going to receive, is when other people go, good job. Wow, you're so much better than me. He says, don't do that. Actually, if you want to fast for real, like, go to a private place, go behind closed doors. Don't let people see it. Let it truly be a gift to the Lord and him only. I think Jesus is saying the exact same thing. You can check that spiritual box, but not do it for the right reasons and not have your heart in the right place. That's all that this message is about. If I had to say it down to one thing, it's simply this. Do not make an assumption that because you cut down some palm branches today and yesterday and you have plans for it tomorrow, that God truly has your heart. That is not a good place to assume. It's not a good thing to put your life into. It will leave you high and dry at some point. Luke chapter 19, verse 39 through 40, as I close. And some of the Pharisees in the crowd said to him, Teacher, rebuke your disciples. Remember, they were singing Hosanna in the highest. They were singing of his victorious entry into Jerusalem. And Jesus responded, I tell you, if these were silent, the very stones would cry out. In other words, Jesus would not be robbed of the praise that he was due in that moment. If those disciples would have remained silent, some other creation would have to shout for joy. So let me be really clear, I'm not disparaging the thousands of people that were there singing Hosanna, because they were, as creation, responding to the moment that was before them. But what I'm calling you to, and what I'm reminding myself of, is this. I don't want to be a Palm Sunday only Christian, where the price tag is cheap. Therefore, I show up. I hope the next time that there is a much more costly investment that's required on my end, that I'll be at the foot of that cross. God said, pick up your cross daily and follow me. I love those moments when it is the excitement and it's easy. It's like a breath of fresh air. It's just this joy. It's this lightness. There's camaraderie in it, and there's like a clear win. But even if I don't have that, even if we don't see that with our eyes for the rest of our lives, are you still in? Is your life perpetually, continually laid down before the Lord? I'd invite everyone here and at Hart to close your eyes. And before we leave this moment, I want to take a few moments of silence. And I know silence is difficult and awkward, and it can almost feel exposing at times. But I believe that we serve a good Father who gives good gifts, and if we ask, he'll give them to us. And specifically, and I can't ask this for you, only you can, in this next moment of just silence between us and the Lord, I would encourage you to ask the Lord, God, would you reveal to me the area or areas that I have not been on the altar? Maybe I was never on the altar to begin with, or maybe I got off the altar because there was other things I wanted to do and be. I'll tell you right now, the safest place in the world you can be is right there on that altar. It's a fire that doesn't consume you. It's a fire that purifies and brings beauty out of you. So I can't ask for you. Ask the Lord right now. We'll just give him some time. Still with eyes closed, just as an indication of what the Lord's doing in your heart. If you feel like the Lord highlighted something or spoke something to your heart, eyes closed, would you just raise your hand? I just want to see if the Lord's ministering. He has hands all over the room. Praise God. Let me pray for all of us. God, I thank you for every person that's here right now. Lord, it's really easy to judge the intent and the actions of those early disciples that were there for your entry but weren't there at the cross. But Lord, I've been that person so many times in my life, I can't even count. God, you're the only one that knows that. And yet you still love, you still forgive, you still invite. You have so much mercy and grace, far more than I ever would have for anybody else. And so Lord, I just ask right now, God, that you would strengthen our character, not out of a performance mindset to gain anything, favor or acceptance from you, but being empowered by you because you love us and you want us to walk in the fullness of what you've called us out of and into. And so, Lord, I ask that, and I believe I can ask this on behalf of every person that hears my voice. God, we give you permission and we ask that today, tomorrow, this week, when we veer off course, when we get off the altar, when we begin to take the reins of control away from you and say, no, I'm Lord of this area, God, would you so vividly and so clearly by your Spirit, would you show us where we have gotten off of the altar? Lord, we love you. We have no idea the sacrifice that you've paid. We think we do because we read the Bible and because we hear the stories, but God, we truly have no idea what you went through. And yet you did it because you loved us and you wanted eternity for us with you, to save us, to set us free, to forgive us of our past and of our brokenness. And so, Lord, I just say thank you. You are worthy of my life. You are worthy of our time. Whatever we invest, it's so small in comparison to what you deserve. Thank you for your patience. In Jesus' mighty name, amen.